The Chancellor delivered the largest tax-raising budget in history, hammering businesses, motorists, farmers, and pension savers with an unprecedented £40 million raid. It wasn't just a policy misstep, it was an economic detonation. And the fallout is wreaking havoc. Rachel Reeves, once touted as Labour's financial saviour, now sits at the epicenter of a political and economic firestorm, her credibility unravelling faster than the UK economy. It's not just the numbers that are damning. The optics are brutal. Reeves, pale and visibly strained, faced a barrage of jeers during the first Prime Minister's questions of 2025. Her ashen face and the dark rings under her eyes told the story of a Chancellor under siege. Outside Westminster, it wasn't much better. The markets were in chaos, the pound was spiralling downward, and borrowing costs were soaring to levels not seen in decades. This isn't the economic revival Labour promised. 6 months into their administration, the economy is stagnating, inflation remains stubbornly high, and any hope for growth seems like a distant dream. Reeves had claimed she'd inherited a financial mess from the Tories, pointing to a £22 billion black hole in the nation's finances. But her solutions have only deepened the crisis. One of her first moves was to slash winter fuel payments for nearly 10 million pensioners, sparking widespread outrage. It saved the Treasury a paltry £1.4 billion, a drop in the ocean compared to the fiscal challenges ahead, but came at a massive political cost. Pensioners, an already vulnerable demographic, now feel betrayed by a Labour Party that promised to protect them. The backlash was immediate and ferocious, but Reeves pressed on, seemingly oblivious to the political and economic carnage she was unleashing. Her October stunt at the Guildhall in London was another miscalculation. Billed as a showcase to woo global business leaders, it ended up being an embarrassing flop. The Chancellor and Prime Minister Keir Starmer failed to secure the confidence of investors, and their decision not to invite Elon Musk, one of the world's most influential entrepreneurs, was a glaring misstep. By then, the markets were already jittery, spooked by whispers of harsh tax hikes and restrictive policies. Long-term borrowing costs surged as confidence in Labour's economic stewardship plummeted. Then came the fateful Halloween budget. Reeves didn't just spook the markets, she detonated a bomb under the economy. Her £40 million tax raid was the largest in modern history, dwarfing even Norman Lamont's infamous 1993 budget. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Pensioners were hit again, businesses faced higher national insurance contributions, and farmers were blindsided by a 20% inheritance tax hike. Reeves justified these measures by claiming they were necessary to plug fiscal gaps and fund infrastructure projects, but the damage was done. Business confidence collapsed, with firms warning of hiring freezes and layoffs. Economists began sounding alarms about a looming recession. Inflation, which had been showing signs of easing under Rishi Sunak, ticked back up, dashing hopes for lower interest rates. The global economy wasn't helping matters either. Donald Trump's shock return to the White House in November sent tremors through international markets, with fears of renewed trade wars and protectionist policies. But the core of the UK's crisis lies firmly at Reeves' feet. Her budget wasn't just a policy misstep, it was an economic disaster that sent the pound tumbling to its lowest level since 2023 and pushed borrowing costs to a 27-year high. The parallels to Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng's catastrophic mini-budget of 2022 are hard to ignore. Markets are reacting with the same level of panic, and the comparisons have not gone unnoticed. Reeves' credibility is now hanging by a thread. Last week, she faced accusations of running from the chaos after she jetted off to China in the midst of the market meltdown. The timing couldn't have been worse, and opposition MPs weren't shy about dubbing her trip a Peking duck. Back in Westminster, the calls for her resignation are growing louder. Tory leader Kemi Badenoch took full advantage of Labour's turmoil, mockingly backing Starmer to sack Reeves. But the truth is, the Chancellor is trapped. She has 3 unpalatable options: make deeper spending cuts, raise taxes again, a political non-starter, or break her own fiscal rules. All roads lead to further misery for the British public and more damage to Labour's reputation. Reeves' fiscal rules, which require day-to-day government spending to be funded through taxation rather than borrowing, were supposed to be a hallmark of Labour's responsible governance. But they've become a noose around her neck. The budget left just £9.9 billion of headroom, a razor-thin margin in a £1 trillion public spending plan. As the economy worsens, that buffer has likely evaporated, leaving Reeves with little room to manoeuvre. The Office for Budget Responsibility is set to deliver its verdict in March, and the Treasury is bracing for the worst. If Reeves is found to have breached her own rules, it will be a humiliation of epic proportions. The consequences are already rippling through the government. Ministers are furious, accusing Reeves of gutting their departments to maintain her fiscal facade. Manifesto promises are being abandoned, and the public is starting to notice. The Labour Party swept to power on a platform of hope and growth. Now they're presiding over a shrinking economy, rising costs, and collapsing confidence. For Reeves, the clock is ticking. The spring statement on March 26 could be her final reckoning. If the OBR confirms what everyone already suspects, that Reeves has lost control of the public finances, her position will become untenable. The Chancellor who once promised to steer Britain to prosperity now faces the very real prospect of political oblivion. The question is no longer whether Rachel Reeves can salvage her reputation. It's whether she'll take the entire Labour government down with her.